This episode of Full Disclosure is brought to you by the Free State Project. Dr. Jim Garrow has made headlines across the nation over the past few weeks. Dr. Garrow claims that a source has revealed to him a litmus test being used by the Obama administration to weed out top-ranking military officials. That test, whether they're willing to fire on American citizens if called upon to do so. Dr. Jim Garrow is a 2009 Nobel Peace Prize nominee for his work with the Pink Pagoda, an organization dedicated to ending gendercide in China. There are many who say that Dr. Garrow is a hero for that work, but there are others who say the claims made by Garrow in his book, The Pink Pagoda, are inflated and simply untrue. This interview with Dr. Garrow about his claims against the Obama administration should not be seen as an endorsement, nor should we be seen as too afraid to allow Dr. Garrow to speak. Dr. Garrow, let's talk a little bit about this information that was given to you by a source who says that the Obama administration is using a litmus test by which to weed out, if you will, some of the top brass in the U.S. military. Explain to me what that source has told you.
Well, and it's a sad moment that he felt the need to phone me and chat with me about this, but he was clearly distressed. And the phone call basically was citing an incident where a friend of his that he had encouraged into the military, he having been a military leader himself at the highest level, a friend of his had phoned him and said, we are now being pressured to answer a question that is just, well, in the end, it pushed him right out of the services. He had to resign his commission immediately. But the question is, in a scenario where a group of people, citizens, are being asked and requested to lay down their arms in confiscation of those arms, and they would not lay them down, do you as an officer feel that you could, because of your oath to the military and to the President of the United States or the Commander-in-Chief, if given that order to fire on American citizens by your Commander-in-Chief, would you do it? And of course, what he reflected back to me was what he felt was the need to get the message out to America that the Obama administration is, in fact, pushing the military into doing things which are a breach of the Constitution and a breach of the Second Amendment.
This source who shared this with you, as he did, how did the question come up? Was it brought to him by some of his superiors? Was it a written question? In what form was the question presented?
Apparently, it was a sit-down where someone, I don't know who that would have been, but someone asked him physically the question, face-to-face.
And the question that was asked to him face-to-face, he feels confident that, or he or she, I suppose, feels confident that this question is being asked of other top-ranking military as well?
Yes, and I've been on, I don't know how many, over 150 shows, and frankly, people have been in phone-in shows. People from the military are phoning in saying, yes, this is happening. I've heard this from someone at a higher rank, and we've had people, officers who phoned, for example, the Alex Jones show, but have phoned in and said clearly, yes, this in fact is happening.
When you hear this, there's been some folks who have said, well, this is actually nothing new. This is something the military has asked of people for some time. At least to the best of your knowledge, and certainly the source that you've spoken with, is there any indication that this is something new?
Well, it's not, when you sign on and give your oath, to the Constitution and the expectation that you will follow orders. That's nothing new. Of course, that's something that's required upon entering the military and as an officer candidate. But this is brand new as far as coming in and having you sit down and answer this specific question. And that's where the shock for these people and this military, retired military officer at the highest level, that's the shock that caused him to call me. And we had an hour-long conversation, covered a lot of ground, and frankly, the man is shaken about where America is going. And his fear is that, in fact, we're headed toward dictatorship.
What can you tell me about your source? I understand certainly as a journalist that you have to protect your sources, otherwise you wouldn't have any sources. But what can you tell me about this person? Because for folks who are listening, and certainly those who might be critical of this would say, I mean, anybody can make this claim. Anybody can stand up there and say, well, somebody told me that this is happening, and, you know, Obama's going to declare martial law, or, you know, President Bush was really in Iraq for oil. And they can make any claim that they like. What can you offer to people who are listening to this that's any kind of evidence or support for this claim of this source?
Well, I've known the gentleman for 17 years. I came in contact with him as a result of my service on a magazine board out of Washington, D.C., a Catholic magazine. I'm not a Catholic. It's an American magazine. I was brought in to kind of bring an international flavor and perspective, and I guess an ecumenical kind of a flavor to that magazine. And in one of my journeys across America, I actually spent a night in this gentleman's home. It was a real privilege. Yes, he's a name that you would know. Most folks in America would know. Is it credible? To my mind, absolutely, without question. Is the fear a credible fear? Yes, absolutely. And he felt that it would be a good way to get it out, knowing that within our circles, our spheres of influence, that we in fact would have the benefit of protecting him, but getting the message out fairly clearly. And I think, as you've already recognized, it's gone viral on the net, and we've had a lot of response. The warning to the American public is be prepared. Be prepared for something catastrophic that could be coming down the pipe. His understanding or his fear is that it'll be the President of the United States who will order it, not an attack, not from a foreign source, but from the President himself against his own people. So to ask if you'll fire on people who are legitimately and within their rights to hold arms, and the discussion that's going on in America right now is a real caution.
One of the questions that we have here from a man named Justin, he asked this question. He said, what is the context of the question by President Obama? Could it just mean to suppress a violent insurrection by extremist groups, whether politically affiliated or not?
Well, it might be if you didn't read the actual language of this gun bill, for example, where, you know, slipped into it is this notion of any gun that has a handle, which would mean everything can be seized. So, wow. I mean, when you sneak that kind of language in, you know something is untoward here. There's something more that's not being openly discussed and transparent.
What about this question here from Chris, who asks the question, it says, Dr. Garrow claims that a former senior military leader was the source of the information. Obviously, we've already discussed the fact you can't share who that person is, but they do ask this, is there any evidence that the doctor can provide that would add merit to this any more than conspiracy theories out there? Because their concern here is that the claim will be washed away with conspiracy theories, even if it's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I understand that. I appreciate the question. You know, in my background, and there's people out there who say, you know, the claim that I actually even know anyone in the military at a high level in America is you know, a stretch. Well, you know, I served on this board in Washington. Well, across the table from me was Alexander Haig. Who was General Alexander Haig? He happened to be the Secretary of State at one point. William Bennett, he happened to be the Secretary of Education at one point. Bill Simon, he was the Secretary of the Treasury at one point. Madeleine de Votali, the first woman president of the New York Stock Exchange. George Marlin, who was the chairman of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. These are the kinds of people that I sat across the table with. You can check with some of them to see, does Jim Garrow have any credibility whatsoever? Do we know the guy? And you'll find that that's true. So a lot of what we take in public, in terms of believing it or not, has to do with the credibility of the individual telling the tale. So I stand firm that what this gentleman has given me is accurate, his concerns are true and viable, and that I'm the messenger. Lots of people would like to shoot me for that, but you know what? I appreciate the trust that was placed in me.
Dr. Garrow, let's talk again about, in terms of the source, and I just want to get a little background here. So the source who talked with you said that he had been called into a private meeting. It was a one-on-one meeting. Is that correct?
No, the gentleman who phoned me indicated that one of the people, and there were many, one of the people that he was talking to who had phoned him, who had been encouraged to join the military originally by this particular officer, had called the officer to indicate that he had been called into a private meeting and been basically given this litmus test.
Okay, and so that officer had been called into a meeting. He was given the test. And did you say that officer had decided he would step down?
He was forced to resign on the spot.
He was forced to resign.
Having given the wrong answer.
Have your sources given you any idea of how many people in the military have been forced to resign over this issue?
No, but if any of the shows that have been call-in shows are an indicator, there have been, we've had many dozen military people phone into these shows and indicate that it's in fact true.
Sam wants to know, he said, I would like to know if anyone who has been cut or forced to resign as a part of this is willing to come forward. Maybe that's not so much a question for you as it is for anyone who might be seeing this. And if you are one of those folks who's been cut, why not come forward at this point? And Dr. Garrow, let me ask you about that. Is there any indication that these folks are unwilling to come forward for some reason? I mean, if there's a group of them or they're being forced to resign en masse, why not come forward together as opposed to leaking the information?
Well, I think that there's something that holds them back with regard to their oath. And I believe, and I don't have this on good authority yet, that there is something akin to an official Secrets Act that many of these folks are under its purview. Therefore, if they, in fact, let out information that could in any way be pointed to as a violation of an oath of secrecy, that they could be charged.
Here's another question for you from Roberto. He asks, what is the ratio, if you know by chance, between those who said that they would be willing to fire on Americans versus those who said they would not?
I have no idea. No idea.
And I guess the last question here is a question from Josh, who asks if you believe that many of the men and women who currently serve in the military would be willing to follow this kind of order, even if it came from high-ranking officers who had signed on to this.
Do I believe that they would?
Correct.
I believe that the officer who shared and trusted me with this message put it out for the very good reason to warn the public, but also to say to the military, it's okay to say no. It's okay to be forced into resignation. In fact, it's an honorable thing.
Certainly the message you've been putting out has been getting a lot of attention, not just probably here in the United States, but I would guess worldwide. What has the response been like so far?
Overwhelming. It's been insane. I heard about the term viral on the internet, and now I know what it means. Well, it means, your email basket having over 21,000 emails in it, and the phone ringing constantly off the hook. Messages on the internet through Facebook or other messaging abilities. Absolutely astounding.
Folks who would say, these claims are really unfounded and they're not coming from a legitimate source here. Dr. Garrow is in Canada. You're in Canada, correct?
I'm in Canada, yeah.
Okay. He's in Canada. Why would, again, as I think you alluded to this before, why would he be contacted on this? And this is just a guy trying to get attention out there. Yeah. I'm sure there's been a lot of negative that's come with the positive as well.
Oh, absolutely. There's been lots of it, but there's always detractors with anyone who comes forward with anything. But I love America. I went to high school for a few years in America. I've gone to American universities. When I stood up and said the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, I meant it.
And today, as you continue to spread this message, have you talked to your source since this has all gone viral?
Well, just the once, and he just phoned momentarily, actually, just to say thank you. Thank you for honoring the request. And that was it, very short.